This is the Borderless Crypto Podcast. Hello everyone, I'm your host, George Manloff, and in this series I bring you exceptional investors, entrepreneurs, hustlers, and thought leaders from the cryptocurrency space. Today, my guest is Jamie Finn, a seasoned executive who is currently president at Securities.io. Securities is one of the leading asset tokenization platforms, and in this talk, Jamie shares why in the very near future, all traditional securities will inevitably become tokenized digital securities. Jamie also describes his vision on the new opportunities for instant leverage that tokenized securities create. I learned a lot from this conversation, and I'm sure you will as well. Please note that anything that I or my guests say in these talks is for informational purposes only and should not be treated as investment advice. And although during daylight I'm part of the team behind the crypto lending platform Nexo, at night when I do these talks, I share only my personal thoughts which in no way represent Nexo's opinions. Now it's time to get the podcast started in 3, 2, 1. Jamie, it's an honor to have you here on the show. Before we start, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you end up in the crypto industry?
Yeah, sure. Right. So I'm Jamie Finn, president and co-founder of Securities, and essentially have been, working in all things new technology from the very beginning of my career. Always have been fascinated with everything that's new. When I started, which was way back in like 2000, the internet had collapsed and mobile was going to be the next thing. And so I got super interested in mobile devices, mobile phones, all things mobile. And pretty much from there in my career worked in all sorts of different businesses around that, and worked at some very large companies like Ericsson, Telefonica, O2, and a company in the US called AT&T. And then additionally worked at a bunch of startups, all right? And so I've worked at Zingy, which was sold to Foresight in Japan very early on, ringtone business. Contera, which was sold to Amobi. Ring Ring Media, sold to Amobi. I worked at here with Securities, which was another business. Worked in, a startup most recently in the mobile advertising space called Aki, and have always kind of been fascinated by whatever's new. And so while I was at Aki here in San Francisco in 2017, beginning of 2017, me and some of the engineers were checking out this new kind of thing that was popping up around cryptocurrency. That was when it became kind of, I became aware of it. I think the first notes, if I go back in my Evernote and I look at it, it's like maybe like 2014. There's a few comments about looking at Bitcoin. There were some Wired articles and things like that. But the reality was I didn't do anything with it until 2017. And then I did kind of the Neanderthal thing of logging into Coinbase, buying some really simple kind of basic cryptos. And then we all kind of stood there shocked as we watched something we paid $20 for suddenly go to $400, $800, $1,000. And in that time just became totally enraptured in this new market and what the possibilities were. And, during the same time, kind of invested in a few ICOs, which actually turned out fine. And they are still operating projects, which are quite legitimate. But really got confused by the ICO in general as an investor because it didn't really make sense to me after I thought about it for a while. So first you have the irrational exuberance of, wow, this is growing so fast, I got to do more. And you're not thinking. And then I started thinking and I was like, wait a second, what am I buying? And then that didn't make any sense to me anymore because I was buying the future use of something, which in my brain just didn't work. And so, because normally assets devalue. Yeah. And so kind of got interested in digital securities, or security tokens as they're known now, back in summer of 2017, working with Carlos Domingo, my co-founder. And we, in November, launched Securitize, basically to help other people create digital securities, because there was a real demand in the market for this type of product that wasn't being satisfied by the existing kind of players.
All right. And what is Securitize? Can you tell us that
Yeah,
in brief? And who
sure.
does directly Securitize benefit?
Yeah, no problem. What Securitize does is we are a platform for issuing a digital security or security token. And we offer an end-to-end service wrap, which means everything from the onboarding of your customers or investors, sorry, in the right way based on the country they're coming from, all the way through to lifecycle management of the investor, trading, so making sure the trades are done in a compliant way, dividend distributions. All of those things are managed directly through a platform that we provide to our customers, and they're in kind of total control of their securities. So that's what we do. And then the problem that we solve is issuance, and you guys should know this, right? At Nexo, issuance of a digital security is complex. It has a lot of different steps, and you can definitely try to create your own product, but increasingly you have to ask yourself, if you're in the business of building, kind of, I use the comparison to like the internet, are you building your own data center, or are you just buying stuff from Amazon? And so in this space, you can either go and build your own data center, buy the servers, build it up, build the racks, have engineers doing that, et cetera, and try to create your own security tokens, or you can use a company like ours to do that for you.
Okay, so your customers are token issuers and
Yeah.
only token issuers, correct? Or
Yeah,
digital
exactly. So our
security
customers,
issuers.
are issuers of the securities, and essentially we've done projects now in private REITs. So we did the St. Regis Hotel, the Aspen Coin. We've done a bunch of venture funds like Blockchain Capital, Spice VC, Science, Protos, 22X. And then we've done some startups like Lottery.com or Augmate. Those are all live tokens now that you are trading on actual exchanges or marketplaces, I should say, like Open Finance or Shares Post here in the US. And we have some others coming on very shortly that will support our digital securities protocol. But the key here is this stuff's out there. You can do these types and create these types of securities. And we're doing it at scale, which is important.
Okay. So at what point do you talk to investors, or do you talk to investors at any point, or is that the job exclusively of the issuers that work with you?
Right. It's a great question, actually. So Securitize as a business is simply a technology service provider. So we do not raise money. It's one of the biggest misconceptions in the space, is that your platform should raise money for you. The reality is that is not a good option. You want to work with folks in your specific category that are good at raising money. So, if you have a real estate deal, you should go to broker dealers or folks in your country that specialize in raising money in that category, because it's very different than people who focus on raising money for startups. It's very different on people who raise money for venture funds, because those types of audiences are all different. And so at Securitize, we made the conscious decision to stay out of that and really focus very narrowly on being a technology service provider, simply because we feel like it's the right solution, and it keeps us unbiased so that our customers can go out and find the right partners for them in order to help with the capital formation side.
Okay, that makes sense. And you already mentioned that you are addressing, like, some of your clients include startups, some of your clients are real estate projects or funds. Are these the major categories that you work with, or are there other type of companies that are also looking to be issuing security tokens?
I think it just depends on how you want to slice and dice it. You can also look at it like, we issue equity and debt. You can issue equity and debt using our platform. So there are all the kind of different products in the finance space are doable using our technology today. And we've done most of the major ones. Those are kind of the key ones. I think we'll start to see more interesting structured finance products. We have a customer who's doing a high yield credit fund, which we haven't really seen in the space. I'd be really interested in somebody doing like a triple net lease real estate deal, which is basically a cash flowing real estate deal on great properties, and you can do them in any country you like, but you can do them in the US. You go out, put together six six properties that are essentially flowing with cash today, and they have a very famous kind of business on it, and then tokenize that and sell it to investors as a revenue stream. We'll start to see those more sophisticated models as we go. A lot of people in the space kind of looked at this and were like, this is a better ICO, and it's really not actually a good comparison to an ICO. In fact, for the most part, we try to dissuade people from doing securities offerings when they're in the very, very early stage of their business. If you're a startup, we readily recommend you focus on Series B and beyond right now. This is a very US centric point of view. There may be other countries where this will work better for a startup, but for us and what we've observed in our customer base and who's able to raise money, it's really people with traction and a track record tend to raise money very well. People who are doing this for the first time, it's very difficult.
So does this mean that your clients are mostly in the US, or you're also open to work with issuers from other geographies?
Yeah, our issuers, to be fair, are from all over the world. Most of them are offshore entities, and we have just expanded our team pretty dramatically. So from the very start until basically the end of December, we were really just a US only operation with only folks here. We now have hired a person who runs Asia for us in Jacqueline Kwok, or JK. We have somebody running Europe for us in Briege Tinley. And then we've expanded into New York with Evan Malanga. And so we've really expanded kind of our reach very dramatically. The US is obviously a huge market. San Francisco or the West Coast of the US is just one piece of it. New York is gigantic when it comes to capital markets. So we felt it was important to be there. Okay.
So if you have to summarize, for like you described a potential great deal of a real estate project, let's say, that could generate a lot of cash. If you, let's say, have a room of 50 people who are in charge of such real estate projects, how would you summarize the value proposition of Securities to them? Like, why would they go for issuing a digital security?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? So the reason to do a digital security is that fundamentally at its core, the product is better, right? So the ability to have a real-time cap table of all of your holders of the security, be able to pay them a dividend that clears and settles instantly is exceptionally powerful. And you, through these types of systems, who all your shareholders are or token holders are. And that's really unique. There is pretty much no environment that exists in the world today where you can instantly know all of your cap table holders, even if they're trading on a marketplace, and settle and clear dividends and distributions. You could do share buybacks, all the normal mechanisms you can do with a piece of paper, you can now do in a digital format. And, it's early days of this, and we're essentially building this out, and there's a lack of trust. Currently, people don't really understand some of the words that the crypto world uses. So we're trying to move away from those words because language is super important and move towards more normal financial products. And so, what I would say is, this is a great product for sophisticated investors who want to have some liquidity. And, what Nexo is doing is obviously fantastic because it provides another layer of liquidity that isn't possible in a traditional world in the same way or same speed. So this is all about essentially taking what is a paper-borne process that takes weeks to settle and clear, making it instant, and then enabling all new scenarios around liquidity, like trading, like borrowing. Like, those are super powerful concepts.
Right. No, I totally see all of this, this whole proposition. I've been thinking before our talk, since that is the case, do you see, a couple of years from now, or I don't know, a certain period of time from now, that a whole certain class of assets are securitized? So, because, for example, the way you describe it, is there any disadvantage for, let's say, a venture fund, for example, not to have a digital security, but to opt in, just go the traditional way?
The disadvantage right now, if there was one, is mainly around perception. So there's no real disadvantage. A venture fund's a great example. So everything you can do in a normal venture fund, you can easily do in a tokenized venture fund. You just have a lot more options to it. The asset quality is the same. The way it's structured is pretty much the same. Instead of LPs, you have token holders, and so in the case of that asset, there's really nothing holding it back, except people who invest in venture funds tend to be very, very rich older folks, and
Right.
they're not comfortable with this world yet, and it's going to take some time. We have a customer whose investors demanded paper certificates.
Right. Right.
They demanded them, and we had to create them. So there you go.
Okay, but from that point of view, then whose is the responsibility to convert, so to say, those type of folks into the new age type of digital securities? Because you say your clients are the token issuers, then they raise the money themselves. So do they persuade their investors? Do you help them do that, or how do you see this kind of evolving?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, so the way that the market is evolving is sort of the natural kind of curves that we see, which is there's this rush of early adopters. Everyone's like, yeah, I got to do it. They all kind of get in, they kind of launch a bunch of stuff. Some of it goes really well, some of it goes horribly badly. We enter this trough of despair, and then real building starts. And as the real building starts, real education starts, and people start to learn about what's really possible, does it make sense? And serious people start getting involved. And when serious people start getting involved, then they ask really hard questions. And when you have answers to really hard questions, then the market happens. We don't, as a general group, we do not have those answers yet. We're learning how to even have a conversation with them. Like I was just in Las Vegas at this event called SFIG. It's a Structured Finance Industry Group. Okay, it doesn't sound that exciting, but let me tell you, all the money's in the room there. And in the room, they have a whole track dedicated to blockchain. And it's the one event where those rooms are overfilled. Like everyone's trying to learn about this and they want to engage about it. But we forget, because if you're in the crypto world, you forget like how basic this is. Most investors today, and I was literally on a phone call with a customer who's killing it at their project. They're raising at an amazing pace, fantastic. And he knows how to communicate in mass, right? He's excellent at it. And he's like, listen, all I have to do is explain to people that this is different from Bitcoin. And then they're like, oh, okay, cool. I thought it was Bitcoin. But we forget that that's where investors are today.
Okay, so you think it's more like a natural way, it's kind of naturally gonna happen. It's like a general effort from your side and from the side of the token issuers as well, for us to reach the point at which all securities would be digitized.
Yeah, it's inevitable. I think the timeline is unknown, but it's inevitable that it will happen. It's very similar to the adoption of cloud and cloud-based technologies or voice over IP, same thing, right? So you have kind of your early phase where people are really uncomfortable with it. Like, cloud, I don't know. Like, what is this public shared internet thing? I'm going to put my content on there? No way. I'm going to run my own private network, and then maybe I'll connect with a few people. And then suddenly you're connecting with so many people that you're on a public cloud. And that's just the right answer because it's the right way of doing things. So I think this space will see a lot of the same things. We'll see permission blockchains, private permission blockchains, gain a lot of scale for really hardcore financial products that will then open up into public blockchains because it'll make sense. I don't think any of the public blockchains today can handle the scale of what's out there, but I'm sure that the developer communities that are working on this will solve the problems before the financial market has so much demand that it can't meet it. Like the developers are just better and faster than financial markets. Like that's a given.
Right. Okay. And in that sense of scalability, at this point, the way your business operates, because I saw that you have digitized securities for like a few projects, a handful of projects, maybe less than 10, I imagine.
Yep.
Is there something stopping you from issuing more digital securities, like accommodating way more projects.
Yeah. So
Or
yeah, I mean, in our world, we see about 1,000. Last year we saw about 1,000 projects inbound, right? And we did about 3% of them at the end. And the reality is, it takes much longer to do one of these offerings than people expect. So they kind of expect they're going to show up, and a month later they're going to be live and trading, and they raised $100 million. That's not how this works. Usually takes about 6 months from the first time we talk to somebody until they're live and actually raising money at scale. And because of that, it'll take 6 to 9 months from when we sign a customer until they issue a security. So, projects we started last year, we'll issue this year, and we'll be north of 10, by the end of Q1. And hopefully we'll get to our goal of, I have an aspirational goal of 100 by the end of the year, but we'll see if we get there. And our technology, definitely has evolved very dramatically. And we have a huge release coming in March, which will help us scale that much more quickly. But nonetheless, you still need good projects, good investors, and demand from the market to trade and own these things. And that's in the formation phase. So to try and go too fast now is dangerous.
all right, and in that train of thought, I saw at an event where you were presenting, you had this slide that STOs could potentially replace IPOs. Can you talk a little bit about this as to why that is the case, and what does need to happen so that this becomes a fact?
Yeah. So right now, and this is a very US centric problem, it's extremely complex and expensive to go and do a full blown IPO here. There's a ton of regulatory hurdles that have to be cleared. It's very expensive to operate. It's going to cost you millions of dollars per year just to comply with the regulatory frameworks. And so you have companies like Uber, Airbnb, Lyft, who aren't going public for as long as they can avoid it. And now some of them will go public this year, and they'll go public through this concept of a direct listing. But the challenge is when there's tons and tons of capital available to founders of very successful businesses, there is no reason for them to go to a public market and submit themselves to the scrutiny of that market and have to deal with millions of shareholders all over the world. Now, kind of a securities offering, STO offers you sort of the best of both worlds, where you can get liquidity for limited liquidity, not the same type of liquidity you get in a public market, but you get limited liquidity for investors and shareholders and employees as you do the offering. But at the same time, you're not subject to all the same disclosures that you'd have to do in a full-blown IPO. Do I think that eventually we'll see tokenized IPOs? Yeah, definitely. But that market has to evolve as well, because today the way that things work is you pick an exchange and you list on that exchange. And I'm using the word exchange versus marketplace intentionally. So if you look at somebody and you're like, well, I'm going to list on NASDAQ, then you've listed on NASDAQ. You're not going to go and list on 15 other exchanges around the world. You're on NASDAQ. That's where you're at. Maybe you get a tracker on some other ones. With digital securities, you don't have to do that. You can list on, T0, Shares Post, Open Finance, name 15 other exchanges they're going to launch. I think 6 in Switzerland's launching an exchange. There's a whole bunch that are kind of launching their own marketplaces for these securities. And you can list on all of them simultaneously with the exact same security and have it trading in all those places, which is a very crypto concept, to be honest, because you can't, like, the cryptocurrencies do that today, and it's wild. But that wasn't a thing until recently. So you have 24/7 markets operating all over the world simultaneously, like a whole different thing.
So you think the same would happen with private companies as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. So I think what we'll see is this evolution from these smaller private placements. Some of these companies will be successful. 1 in a million will be really successful. They will have started with a tokenized cap table. They'll get to a point where they want to go on a few exchanges, like real exchanges, not marketplaces, and they'll list the company there. But it'll have been through a natural process of evolution, and there will have been liquidity throughout the life cycle for the business throughout. But I mean, at the end of the day, so look at somebody like Facebook. They have no idea who their shareholders are, right? So they have no clue who owns Facebook shares because they're all held in custodial accounts with broker dealers and street names and things like that. So they don't actually know if like they have some person they wouldn't want to have on their cap table there. They don't have a clue and they have no way to check it. In this world, you'll know everybody who's there, and you know who owns it. You know when they bought in, how much they own. You can look at their voting rights around it. So there's really, really powerful concepts here that'll be, further evolved over the next few years.
And again, for this to happen, do we need some kind of changed regulation in the US or in other countries, or?
It's so regulations. It's a hot topic. I think U.S. regulation for the most part works, and I'll say it this way. I know people don't love it, but the fact that you, as a company selling securities in the U.S., have a 1-year lockup period for U.S. investors. So one of the big challenges in the U.S. Is around this concept of accredited investors. And an accredited investor means that there's a threshold for you to have to invest in a project. Many folks in the crypto community hate that because they feel like it's unfair, like they should be able to invest in it, blah, blah, blah. I get it. It's a good argument. But the other side of the argument is, what if somebody else is taking the risk for you and they're investing and they're locked up for a year? And so they have to do better due diligence in the investment they're going to make, because they're going to be sitting on that thing for a year. And if after a year happens, the thing dumps and it's not worth anything, then the guy who got screwed is an accredited investor who's a professional who has enough money to deal with that problem. And the guy who didn't get screwed is the normal investor day to day. They can come in and they can buy into the offering. And so like the mentality, which is, the ETH millionaires, who are like, more millionaires were created with Ethereum than in any other project ever. That was true when ETH was at 1,000. ETH at 100 is a lot of people losing a lot of money, right? So if you bought in at $700, you're hurting right now. And so, the hype cycles around these things are huge. The risk is gigantic. So let someone else take it for a year, and then you can buy it. And how much do you lose? Maybe you lose a little bit, but for the most part, if you look at kind of the securities offerings that have been out there that are successful, like if you look at Spice, which is one I know very well, Spice VC, if you bought into the original offering at $1, the net asset value or NAV is now like $1.36, and it's trading at that price on open finance. Like, cool, right? Like, what's the problem? That's a good trade. Like, you may make 36, go make 36% on any real normal financial asset. Good luck, all right? So they've done a good job with that, and so it's not a like, let's make 12x overnight type of thing, but there's good money to be made, and it's a longer game. And because it's a longer game, you'll get more serious investors because it's not just this hype.
All right. And Jamie, how far do you think that this tokenization and securitization will go? So, for example, I saw that you are a Chelsea fan, right?
Yep, I am.
So would you like to be?
Finally, it's been a while, so
right. So would you like to be a digital security token holder of a Chelsea security?
Yeah, Chelsea Football Club. Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's some really interesting stuff you could do. Chelsea's building a new stadium, right? And so if they wanted to finance the building of the stadium, maybe they do an offering where you get, in the front of the line for season ticket holders if you hold a certain amount of securities, right? So then you can go right to the front of the line because you're helping them fund the building of the stadium, right? So that's a combination of like a real estate project with a really cool brand that has a fanatical following. They're in London, so they're well suited to have, high net worth individuals invest in this type of project. And, the owner, Roman Abramovich, is very skilled financial dude. So he's probably looking at this, I would bet. I mean, that guy doesn't miss out on much.
Okay, so maybe he should
Yeah, I'll drop him a note later.
You should. No, but seriously, although joking, I'm thinking securitizing, tokenizing, clubs, sports clubs is potentially huge, and it looks very doable to me. Like, there's definitely going to be demand.
I think. Yeah, I totally agree. I think in the U.S. there's a good example of it, actually. there's an American football team called the Green Bay Packers, and they are public on the on one of the kind of exchanges here. I can't remember if I think it's NYSE. And people can buy shares in the Packers. They don't really get anything for it. It's just you say you're an owner.
Right.
Like there's no real benefit besides that. And that's enough for a really fanatical fan base. Do I think we'll see more of that? Absolutely. And I think, to be fair, European law is a little bit, we talked about regulation earlier. European law is a little bit easier, I think, to deal with around these private placements. And they do allow for some retail investors on a country by country basis. There's different thresholds. And so, I think that there is space for everybody in these types of offerings over time. And also, I think the European model of self-accreditation is better than the US model of prove it, which is a little bit cumbersome, but hey, here we are.
But so here, I guess the huge difference, what you just mentioned, that there's this US club that is on that is public, that is traded.
Yeah.
But what would be the huge, difference as in a case where you have a club that has a digital security is that the club owners, the club management would instantly at all time know who are the token holders or the digital security holders. So they could not just say, hey, I'm an owner, but they could actually, get certain types of privileges, or I don't know, you can think of a whole lot of things that you can play around with there.
There's all sorts of and I'm sure there's like a million people working on really amazing incentive schemes around this, but like stupid things. You could vote on your team's third jersey. Like, do you really want it to be that weird pink that Manchester United picked? No, nobody wants that. A horrible choice. And so, there's all sorts of interesting decisions around governance that you can do, which could be fun and could be executed well. I think the challenge to get to that point, though, is making it really easy to interact with these securities and to interact with the shareholders. We're too far away from that from the user experience point of view right now. And it's getting dramatically better. But even the most sophisticated dApps with the best wallets and all that stuff is hard to use. I got a bunch of EOS that I'm trying to use the EOS Links wallet to do stuff with it. And I like to learn about things, like I mentioned earlier. And most of it's in Chinese to begin with, which is kind of hard to understand. But the other part is I don't really understand how the wallet interacts with the account, with my account. Simple things like I want to rename my username from GBP7652 to my name. I don't know how to do that.
Right.
My account is some totally random sequence of numbers and letters.
Yeah, definitely. So the user experience thing is still a major thing to develop. But again, that's on the side of the developer, so they should be faster than the finance guys, right?
Yep. Yes, we hope.
So
but we don't need just developers. We also need designers, experienced designers.
Indeed. Yeah, that's a huge difference. That's what makes it. We could make it really accessible.
Yeah.
So moving on to liquidity, the big topic in the crypto space and in general in trading. So essentially, one of the main reasons for having this talk is the collaboration that we have been working on together with Securities and Nexo in order to enable token holders of digital securities to get instant access to liquidity via the Nexo platform, as a way to not have to, as a way to leverage their securities without selling them. And so in order for this to happen, now I'm not in charge of the talks that you're having with my folks here at the team, but from our discussions, in order for this to happen and for us to actually launch the first such project, we need to already have liquidity of a certain digital asset, digital security that is out there on an exchange.
Yep.
So how is the situation today with tokens that you have issued? Are they liquid? How much are they liquid? Is the liquidity going to increase? Which type of securities do you expect to be the most liquid and most appropriate potentially for for example, when it comes to providing instant liquidity with loans like we have at Nexo?
So great question on liquidity and how how this whole kind of loan mechanism can work. So I think right now one of the most exciting things that's happening in the space is these new financial products that are being created. So the whole concept of DeFi, I think, is fascinating, right? And what, as you correctly point out earlier, you need some liquidity to do that. So let's take an example of a real token. So let's say that somebody's a large holder of Spice VC, which is a token we discussed earlier. It's listed on Open Finance. There is liquidity. It's being bought and sold at some volume. It's not huge, but there also aren't a lot of people that want to sell it right now because it's doing pretty well. And so the ability to take a loan against that asset is actually super appealing because you have a strong performing portfolio with a very good NAV. It's trading at very close to its net asset value, which is unusual. Most of the time, funds, when they trade, will trade at major discounts, 40, 50% discount, 30% at a minimum. The fact that Spice is very close to its NAV is really powerful. And so as a Spice holder, to be able to go to Nexo, take the tokens that I hold, lock them up so that I can then take a loan against them is a fantastic opportunity, right? And so, I am actually a Spice holder. I'm interested in using it. And so I think our integration will work really, really well that way because it allows me to do something that I can't normally do without a whole bunch of other parties involved. Like, so the transaction, to be able to go to a website, take my security, lock it up, borrow some money against it, all on my own without another human involved, is amazing. And to do so in a way that complies with the different regulatory regimes around the world is even more amazing. And so, to have that whole ecosystem put together and operational via a few clicks on a website is, I think, going to be gigantic.
And the beauty of it is this is actually happening.
Right. It's real. It's not imagined.
And we're very excited as well for making this happen. And the great thing is, I don't think we're that far away from it at all. So would really love to see how this develops, and to see it actually live in the coming months.
Yep.
And
if I may add, there's really interesting things you can do in this space once you can do that. So I have a customer that is in a particular line of business where they have difficulty accessing cash, but they have a lot of inventory. And so if you have a lot of inventory that you can tokenize, you can then take that tokenized inventory and get an instant loan against it, which would be really difficult to do with a bank. But you've secured the inventory and it's owned by this contract. And so you could go again to Nexo with your inventory and take a loan against it, which is fascinating. I think we're going to see things like factoring happen at scale with Nexo. Those types of things are real financial products that have real returns that exist at scale. And to do them digitally would be better. I mentioned earlier, I worked in advertising. In the ad space, it takes a very long time to get paid. Okay. So it'll take you 3 to 6 months to get paid easily, right? And if you're running a real business, waiting 3 to 6 months is really hard because you got to pay your employees, you got to pay your vendors. And so what you could do is, if you had a really high quality receivables feed, which is what people do today, they go to banks and they're like, here are my receivables, and the bank will lend them money against it. Well, hell, I'll lend you money against it if your receivables are from the biggest companies in the world. Like, I'll lend it to you instead of the bank, and I'll probably give you a better rate than what you'd get from a bank. And so, the ability for businesses to package those things and do them will be supremely powerful. And I think we'll see very large companies get into that space very quickly because it's a perfect type of asset. It's boring, it's crappy, it's paper-based, everything sucks about it. The whole experience sucks, everything sucks. Put it online, make it digital, and let me do it in 3 clicks. That's a better product. That works.
Right. So why don't you do that at Securities?
Well, we don't build those types of products. I'd be happy if somebody wants to come to us with that idea. We'd be happy to deploy it for you. We stay very narrowly focused in our core business. And it's a big piece of our success to date is not trying to do other people's jobs. So not being a broker-dealer, not being a marketplace, not being an exchange, not doing OTC, not building a wallet. These are all conscious decisions, and companies are defined by what they don't do more so than what they do.
So in that sense, what is your vision for Securitize for the next 2 years? I know that you recently closed a round that, as I understand, is the capital will be able to finance your operations for about 2 years. So what is your plan for these 2 years and beyond that as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now you can see our plan's pretty transparent. We went out, raised money from the best companies in the space. We did it on a global basis. So we have big investors in Japan, Latin America, China, the US, and kind of and Europe. And so we have most of the continents covered with really, really great partners there. And there are some more that we haven't announced in that round, which are just like mind-blowing how amazing they are. And so our strategy is really clear. Execute first and deliver this product on a global basis with scale. And that's what we're doing right now. You can see it in our new hires that we've done. You'll see it in our customers as they go out. And so that's, our focus is very clear, actually, I think.
All right. Cool. So before I let you go, I have a couple of very quick questions.
Yeah.
So in this series, I try to keep a tribute to the so-called evangelists or people who play a significant role in a person's, so to say, conversion to the crypto industry. So was there a particular person, was there a particular book, or was there a particular, I don't know, author, content creator that made you, like this was the moment when you kind of like got it, or where you really got excited about the whole, I don't know, Bitcoin or the crypto space in general?
So I think I would probably attribute that to two people. I would say the first person to talk to me about Bitcoin was Malka in 2014. And then he recommended reading a few articles. One of the articles he recommended reading was by the founder of Sapo, which is Wences Casares. Wences is a Bitcoin investor, maximalist, inventor, I don't know, like all sorts of different things. And he had some really sage advice around how to invest in this new asset class. And I did that. And by investing in the asset class in the way that he suggested, which was take 1% of your net worth, put it into crypto. It enabled me to learn enough about crypto to then figure out what was interesting to me and how I wanted to be involved with it. Because when you have money on the line, you care. Otherwise, it's just theory.
Right. Awesome. Then good job to Mickey.
Yeah, exactly.
And okay. And then the follow-up question is, as of today, is there a particular person that you follow, that you sympathize with, that you learn from, and that you think that we should follow, we should read, we should listen or watch to?
It's a great question. I think here. I'm a huge fan of Brad Stevens from Blockchain Capital. I think he has, he's on our board. I have tremendous respect for him. And, but I think he has, deep insights into the space. And he doesn't spend a lot of time speaking publicly, and he's hard to see or engage with that way. But he talks to everybody all the time. He's super open-minded, and he's really engaged. And so, for me, he's definitely one of the best folks to deal that we have the opportunity to interact with on an ongoing basis.
All right. Thanks, Jamie. It was a pleasure having you. I hope to have you once again as a guest.
Sure.
The moment that we actually launch instant loans against Securitize from the Securitize platform.
That's awesome.
And until then, keep executing and delivering on a global scale. A couple of things before you take off. First, if you enjoyed this episode, be generous and share it with your best friends. They deserve it, they will appreciate it, and they will be grateful to you. Second, I named this podcast Borderless Crypto because I have been fascinated by the speed with which crypto has been breaking financial borders. Just like the internet empowered us to communicate and share information with anyone, anywhere, 24/7, 365, crypto is empowering people of any country to transact freely, to invest in all sorts of assets, and to access capital to grow their economic status. I'm super pumped to be part of this financial transformation. That is why I'm doing this podcast, to spread awareness about crypto and to accelerate the removal of economic borders. If, like me, you want to see a borderless financial world, help me spread the word about crypto even faster by spending 1 minute to rate this podcast, write a review, and subscribe, so that more people learn about crypto, and in this way, together with you, we accelerate crypto adoption. Finally, if you have any suggestions, feedback, or anything you want to tell me, send me a message on my Twitter handle at borderlessbtc. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you soon again.